Welcome back to another 5 Fact Friday, where we share 5 fun facts about a specific whiskey or wine topic, and hopefully you're going to learn something. Let's go. So today we are talking about California as a wine region, the history, and just a lot of random fun things about California, just like we do. Fun fact about this video actually is when you guys see it, I'm actually going to be in California checking out some of the wine regions, and not spending as much time as I'd like doing that, but it's fine. In classic whiskey and wine fashion, we're going to start with the early history and the nerdy details there. So looking at California, or just really American wine, it didn't start in California. When obviously the US was getting started, everything was over on the East Coast. So if you were thinking of American wine, you were actually thinking wine from Ohio primarily, but then also Virginia as well. That's mainly where a lot of that wine was coming from. That being said, we did see some wineries start getting planted in California pretty early on. So there were some sources that said it was as early as the 1600s we were seeing some wineries getting planted, but those weren't very notable, they didn't last. Nobody really cared about those ones. It wasn't until 1769 when some missionaries came over and they actually started planting some vineyards and really getting that in and using them consistently to make really, or I shouldn't say really good wine, to make wine basically that they were going to use for their religious practices. This is very common for missionaries. If you were going to be going to a new spot, you needed wine for sacrament and all these other things. So you'd plant a vineyard and you'd start making wine. You can imagine what type of wine they were going to be producing if it's just very quickly made like that, but that's neither here nor there. It wasn't until some time after that we actually start to see California wine becoming more notable and much more present in America and then on a global stage. So the first step here was going to be the gold rush. If you don't know, the gold rush happened in 1848, where people from all over the world are just flooding into California because gold was found and you could just go dig up and just go get gold. It was amazing. So all these people are coming, and one of the big spots that they came to was actually going to be the Sierra foothills. If you look at California as a wine region, you're going to see the Sierra foothills is one of the locations that is still pretty prominent today, and I've had some wine from there. It's pretty good. I really enjoy it. But with all of these people coming here, you need to be able to give them something. So a lot of people come from Europe. They drink brandy, they drink wine. So we need grapes. You're going to start seeing more vineyards being planted, the grapes being harvested, and producing wine and brandy. This was the first step to people seeing that California can produce a lot of wine. I wouldn't necessarily say it's good wine yet. The next was going to be when, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but it's the phylloxera. This annoying word here, it essentially is this nasty little bug that was attaching to the vines out in Europe and in the US and just absolutely destroying them. And by the time you realized it was in your vineyard, it was far too late and you basically had to start over. So in Europe, they lost so many vineyards. All of these vines were destroyed. They had to start from scratch, but they weren't able to get them to plant because the bug would just come back and wreck it again. It wasn't until an Ohio viticulturist found out how to graft the American vine with the European vine to make it resistant to this. This was absolutely groundbreaking. It did kind of mess up Europe a little bit because now when they exported this back over there and were like, hey, this works, it completely changed, well, we shouldn't say completely, but it did change the flavor of European wine. However, it also did save European wine, and we are able to have the wine we have now. Again, this was a spot that kind of put America up a step when it comes to winemaking. Now, the final step was going to be the Judgment of Paris. In 1976, a British importer kind of did a celebration for America's 200th anniversary or birthday, whatever, and got together a giant wine tasting panel. And there were tons of wines that were put into this panel. The two that ended up winning out were actually going to be from America. One was a Chardonnay and the other was a Cabernet Sauvignon, both about 3 years old. When this happened, this completely shook just the wine world, being like, oh, okay, so the best wine does not have to come from France. It can come from America, it can come from other places. This really opened the door and set California up on the pedestal that it's still sitting on today. Now we can see how California got to where it is. Let's talk a little bit about why this really worked. So if you look at California on a map, you can see it's extremely long. So they're going to have a ton of different just environments where you can grow grapes. Some are going to be really warm, some are going to be dry, some are going to have a warm air coming on, some are going to have a cooler air. There's lots of variety there, which is going to be good to make a variety of types of wines. Variety of types. Yeah, I guess that works. You get a wide variety of wines, what you end up getting. But at the same time, if you look at this and then you compare it to Europe, you're going to see that this is sitting on the same parallels as Italy, southern France, Spain, Portugal, some of the biggest wine regions in the world, or really in Europe. It's also going to be a great spot for export because obviously it's on the coast, but then you also have all the railways right here. This is going back before we had the amount of transportation we had now. The railways coming over to California meant you could export all over the US. You get it to the other side, so then you could ship it over to Europe, or if you wanted to go to Panama Canal, all that crap. It was very easy to ship things out as well. So California was really a prime spot when it came to winemaking. Now, seeing as California is the powerhouse it is, it has really had a global effect and a massive effect on the US itself. Looking just a few years ago, back in 2022, we can see that California ended up bringing in around $88 billion worth of revenue just from the wine industry alone. So if we go back in history, we can see that all of these people are coming over, they are working, they are bringing in all of this money, all this capital. It's a great thing to have. Oof, it's knocked over my coffee. It's a great thing to have a place like California producing the wine that it is producing and then sending it all over the place. It also makes it so other regions were able to start producing more wine, exporting it, realizing that, hey, not all good wine has to come from Italy, come from France, come from Portugal, come from Spain or Germany, wherever in Europe. It can come from other places as well. So let's look at California now and just like kind of the wine regions and what you might find in some of those regions. You can really split it up into 4 different regions. You have the north, you have the foothills, you have the central coast, and you have the southern coast. So if we look at the northern coast, this is going to be your very classic California wines. You're looking at Lodi, Sonoma, Napa, just those really big, I'll say generic locations that everyone knows about. If you say wine, most people think Napa wine, Sonoma wine when it comes to California. So yes, you are going to find things like your very big, bold, juicy Cabernet Sauvignons and your super buttery Chardonnays from places like this. When you get down to the foothills, this is where you're going to get a little bit more of these like wetter styles, I'll say, that like having a little bit more water. But you're going to find some very top-notch Barberas, Zinfandels, and Syrahs here. If you go down a little bit further, you're going to get to that central coast. And honestly, this is going to be warm weather grapes here. So think again, Tempranillos, Syrahs, and same thing when you get to that southern area. You're going to be finding places like Paso Robles, and it's just these big, a little bit more of a drying, high tannin wines. This is the fun thing about California. Because it is so long, you do get these maybe cooler-ish weather grapes from the north side, and then when you get to the south, you're going to get these very warm weather grapes. So depending on where you're at in California is vastly going to dictate what type of wine you're going to get. When it comes to American wine, yes, most people are going to think of just California, and that's because they produce around 90% of the wine coming out of America. That being so, there are some absolute banger bottles out there. But on the flip side, with so many bangers, there's going to be a lot of duds as well that you're going to run into. So be careful when it comes to your California wines. Make sure you're doing a little bit of research and don't just go buy everything coming out of California because that does not mean it's going to be good. If you made it this far in the video, I greatly appreciate you, and it would mean the world to me if you could like this video, leave a comment what you thought about maybe your favorite California wine, and if you really enjoyed it, subscribing would mean the world to me. I hope you guys have a great weekend, enjoy it, and I will see you on Monday. Cheers.